Hello. Welcome back to the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I am Jay. That is Cole, as
So,
always. And today we're going to be covering Fargo from 97,
96.
96. And, uh, and it's been a long time coming, I think, to do another Coen Brothers film because
Our
for those
very
of you
first episode.
that,
Yeah.
that may not know, that's kind of how we started this show was kind of I wanted to hear Cole talk about his hatred of the Coen Brothers. So I thought might as well go ahead and just get an easy one in. We can get this in fairly easy today. Fargo. I'm quite a big fan of this film, so I think
Yeah.
this will be an interesting discussion because I know you're not.
Right. But I mean, we've been a bit diplomatic as far as the Coens go, because I mean, even though this is only our second since our very first episode, I also am okay. Like, this is a movie I'm okay with. Like, I don't hate it. Just like I was okay with No Country for Old Men, which is our very
Yeah.
first episode almost 5 years ago. Um,
Wow.
yeah. But yeah, I've always been okay with Fargo. So yeah, I doubt we're not probably going to get into any arguments or debates, but I will once we get past some of the other stuff. I will just ask Jay to explain to me because I can't get it. Like why, not just him, but I mean I'm in the minority here. This movie was very highly critically acclaimed. It has like a super high score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's considered one of the best films of the 90s. For years, it was on AFI's top 100 American films. It did get bumped off, but it was there until like 2007. Um, Siskel and Ebert named it the best film of 1996. Now, I don't think 96 was a very strong year for film if you look at it, but still, that is something. So I just mean this is a movie, and people always bring up it's a movie that I guess has aged pretty well because people still bring it up and talk about it. And
Mhm.
of course, now we've got the very successful spin-off television series from FX that I've watched the first 3 seasons of, just finished the third season today. And I have to say, mostly I like it. I like it
Mhm.
probably more than the movie, although it's kind of unfair to, compare things that are like 10 episodes long to like a 2 hour movie because it's a different
Well,
thing.
it
But I
says a
mean,
lot too because you're not a show guy.
no,
So
I'm not a show guy, but a couple years ago I watched the first two seasons, and I remember thinking the first was okay, really enjoyed the second, and then I was anticipating the third, and it was before the third had come out, and then as things often happen, by the time the third did come out, it wasn't like I didn't care anymore. I was just
mhm.
on to other things. So I had like years, like 2 or 3 years, like how like when was the third season? Like 2016, 2017.
Yeah, they were pretty sparse. I mean, it was years in between each season.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, I know that it had been out for at least 2 or 3 years. I think by the time I finally got around to watching it just a few days ago, well, starting to watch it a few days ago and finishing it today. And I mean, I like them, and it is
Hmm.
neat. Like they all do spring from the original movie, and you can see how they're all sort of a shared universe, and it works pretty well.
Hmm. Hmm. It's like the daily monotony meets hardcore violence.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, uh, extreme ultra violence, which is I don't know. It kind of works. The even though in this film most of the snow is fake, I think that it works as a really
Yeah,
good backdrop for the story being told.
yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about like noir and the various
Hmm.
sort of spin-offs and subgenres of noir, neo noir, and stuff. Like this is like a neo noir, and it's kind of like small town neo
Hmm.
noir is what it is because so many noirs take place in big cities. Is the idea, but the whole Fargo, the show also, but the movie, it all comes from the idea of like sort of like midwestern crime, I guess, which of course is a thing and does exist. Um, Actually, I finally just watched a movie that I hadn't even know existed. It was about a year ago. I was reading some random list on MSN or something about like greatest on-screen gunfights, and I
Hmm.
was looking, and I agreed with a lot of the choices. And a few of them, I was like, "Oh, I should watch that movie." And one of them was a movie I had never heard of, even though people know it because it's got Sean Penn and Christopher Walken, called At Close Range. And At Close Range was on the list, and I finally got an opportunity to watch it a little over a month ago because I had a subscription, I think, to MGM that I was using through my Prime account and it was on there. And I liked the movie very much, but now having seen it, as far as gunfights go, there people get shot in that movie, but there are no actual gunfights. So I don't know how the hell it gets on the list. Like There's no gunfight. People are just getting like one-sidedly shot, pretty much.
Yeah,
It's a
when you
good
told
movie
me
though.
that, that's what I was thinking. I didn't remember a big shootout scene, but
Yeah,
I
there
mean,
really
I
isn't.
wanted you to watch the movie. I think it's a good movie, regardless. So.
Right. But anyway, my point is like that's also based on a true story. That was something that really happened, and it just sort of points out like in the more I don't remember where it's set, but somewhere kind of rural, away from the big cities, and it was about a real crime family and some of the crimes they committed and blah blah blah. And Fargo's kind of like that too. It's kind of like away from the big centers, the big cities, but you still have organized crime and various shady dealings, and of course acts of shocking violence. They still do occur in these places. So
Mhm.
I like it from that perspective. It shines a light on a different sort of environment than maybe we're used to. We all see the big city stuff, whether it's in the U.S. or even in other countries. But it is nice to take a look at a more rural, small town life. And of course, I guess one of the things that made the movie popular was its emphasis and maybe a bit exaggeration of like the people's accents and their mannerisms and stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's referred to as Minnesota nice.
Uh-huh.
You know, what's I've always found weird is like it is true. Like you do hear that accent in places like that. Maybe it's a bit exaggerated, but you do hear it. Like, is at some point I don't know if it's the '90s or '80s or what, but the wires got crossed and Americans started to think that's how Canadians talk, and it's not. And Canada's a very big country. I live closer to Scotland than I do to British Columbia, but I can still tell you, despite the fact that Canada is very large geographically and we have a various array of accents, we don't have that accent. Even people who live maybe geographically close to a place like Fargo, those would be people who like maybe Manitoba or Saskatchewan, they simply don't have an accent that's even comparable to that. But if you look up like I don't know, like The Simpsons or Family Guy or
Yeah.
whatever, and various things. They'll often have like Canadian jokes, and the characters will speak with that accent. And I don't really get where it comes from. I mean, I know there's the SCTV thing with the beer thing. I'm
Mhm.
Dave, and this is my brother, or Mike from Kitchener and stuff. That has a bit of it, I guess. I don't know when they talk about hosers and stuff.
Yeah, extreme. Whenever you're
Yeah.
doing accents, it's always extreme one way or the other. So.
Right. So I know that this movie had that sort of impact on people in places like Minnesota where people would kind of like make fun of them or be like, say, don't you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't done with any malice or anything like that, but I just
Yeah.
mean
The don't you know thing. That's a big Minnesota thing, I believe.
hmm
Did you ever watch Bobby's World
I
cartoon?
did, yeah, I did the Howie Mandel. I don't
Yeah,
remember it very well.
the mom on that show had a really strong, I guess, Minnesota accent.
Yeah.
Oh, Bobby, don't you know?
Yeah. There were definitely other shows I watched where like they did that for the mom character too, but I don't remember what. Maybe it'll come back to me. Because I mean, I sort of remember Bobby's World, but even as a kid, it was not something I really liked.
I didn't really like it either, but I
But
watched it.
yeah, no, I watched all sorts of stuff. We won't go down this rabbit hole, but as I said, there were some cartoons that were so shitty you can barely believe they existed, and that's kind of why I watched them. I was fascinated by how cinema. I don't think that's weird. Why would that be weird? I mean, as far as French goes, I mean, except for little pockets I've talked about, like it's Quebec. Quebec is the French place.
Hmm.
Quebec is French. Everywhere else, people speak English. New Brunswick, which is between here and Quebec, is the only technically bilingual province. So if you're in the northern or northwestern part of New Brunswick, people will speak French. But I mean, there's no such thing as people in New Brunswick who can't speak English. That's not a thing. They're fully bilingual. As I said, I won't go on a thing here because people have heard me disparage the poor Acadians, but Acadians who were French people of a certain. There's no point in going to their history and stuff. But anyway, they lived in Atlantic Canada or the Maritimes where I live, and as far as that goes, well, there's plenty of people of Acadian heritage here. Most of them don't even have like a French accent, although, like I said, there's little pockets. There's a little tiny village in my native island of Cape Breton called Cheticamp, which I think is the only community in all of Nova Scotia where everybody's like speaking French to you all the time. And again, those people can speak English fine. It's not like if you went in speaking English, they wouldn't have an idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So no, yeah, except for a little tiny pocket like that, and New Brunswick being sort of a weird hybrid. I mean, when they talk about French, it's Quebec, and obviously that spreads out. There's lots of Franco-Ontarians, which are
Mm-hmm.
francophones from Quebec that have moved into Ontario. But again, you're not going to find like a town where they're all speaking French. That's just not a thing. So yeah, I mean, it's Quebec. But I mean, if you're an Anglophone, you go to like a large city in Quebec, like Quebec City or Montreal, you don't need to know a word of French. You'll be fine. So, no, I've never thought of that as weird. I mean, it's just part of being Canadian. That's our two national languages. Some countries have more than two national languages.
Yeah, I know when I was studying a lot of the South American countries for my Spanish class, like they had, I mean, it would be like 5, 6 official languages, you know, in a
Yeah.
fairly small country.
Yeah, so two is really not a big deal. And yeah, any Canadian, even an Anglo-Canadian like myself, probably learned some French in school. Now, how well we know that varies. At one point, I was close to bilingual. I took immersion when I was in junior high. So my entire junior high experience was in French, except it wasn't entire. It was like, obviously, English was still English. And special classes like gym or like whatever industrial arts class, that's what we used to call. When we had various classes called like, we had art, woodworking, graphics. Metals was gone by the time I got there. There used to be metals. They were all called industrial arts. Anyway, those were all in English. But yeah, I didn't continue with that when I went into high school. I switched back to an English, well, just a non-French program. But so my French through my adult life is rusty, but still serviceable in that I understand it pretty well. I read it really well. I don't speak it so well. And understanding it, I still need it really slowed down. Like I can watch like a movie in French, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get every word. I'm definitely going to miss things here and there. I'm always trying to work on it a little bit more. But anyways, I mean, if people have this idea that like all Canadians speak French, no. It's more like all Canadians have learned a tiny bit of French at some point in school and mostly forgotten it, is how it is with most. But yeah.
People probably do think that maybe because all like Canadian products have, you know, the both languages on there.
Right. And I mean, I was just decided a long time ago. I'm fine with it. Yeah, I mean, I can sing the national anthem in French if you want. But yeah, no, it's not weird at all. I mean, countries that only have one official language are kind of more rare than countries that have several.
And the Philippines have, I don't know about official, but
oh my
like
god,
200.
Yeah, there's
crazy.
So many different versions of their language. It's crazy.
Because you think like, oh, it's Tagalog or whatever.
Yeah.
No, that's not even the big one.
Yeah. And that's all mixed up too, because that comes from like a regional language that at some point got mixed up with Spanish, and gave birth to all this other stuff. So yeah, so the fact that Canada has two national languages is not really that rare or different. And as far as francophones go, they're mostly in Quebec. Obviously, there's francophones living all over the place, but they're speaking English. But as far as you're talking about like going into a community where everybody's speaking French all the time and the signs are all in French, I mean, that's just Quebec, really. Thanks, Joe Bob. Some Canadian flair for you too. That's roots. But
yeah. So this it's called Fargo, and that's in North Dakota, right?
Yes.
But it's in Minnesota, right, where the crime takes place in Brainerd.
Yeah. Right. It's weird, like why they choose to use Fargo, because that's where they have like the cabin where they're holding the kidnapped wife.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it is kind of misleading in a way because I mean that's where part of the plot happens. But yeah, the plot moves around and it crosses state lines because it's in North Dakota and it's in Minnesota. And it's when you get into the show does North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. I think even doesn't part of the second season even have some stuff in like Kansas or something? Because isn't like one of the crime families like, or maybe they're just from Kansas. Maybe they're not in Kansas. So they move around a bit. But I guess it's still, a similar sort of area where people are mostly of like, I guess, Scandinavian descent, right? These are people
Season
of like,
4, season 4 is mostly Kansas City.
okay, yeah, I want to see that now.
I didn't even think about that. You know, the title of the show being like way off. Like it's nowhere near Kansas City.
Right. But the movie moves around too, although not quite as much. But I mean, I guess it just goes Fargo because Fargo's where I guess the main action happens. But yeah, it does move around, and it does go between a couple states. Yeah, because it's funny because Fargo itself is in North Dakota, but I think when people think of like Fargo, like now the expanded universe, they think of Minnesota because so much stuff happens in Minnesota. You know, they're watching like the Golden Gophers, the college
Gophers.
hockey team.
That has a run through line through the show the whole time too.
Yeah, go Gophers.
Go Gophers.
Yeah. What's funny is one of the two prostitutes that's in it, and she's actually not even an actress. She was a dialect coach for this movie. She was one of the people. She was the one teaching Frances McDormand how to do the accent. I don't know which of the two, but one of them. She wasn't actually an actress. She was the dialect coach, and they just, I guess, threw her in as one of the hookers, which is pretty funny.
That scene, you know, not the sex scene, but when she's interviewing them, maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie.
I always remember that scene as longer. Maybe it's because it gets so much attention. Because when I watched the movie yesterday, I was like, "That's it." Like it was only maybe 2 minutes. For some reason, in my head, I remember it's longer. Well, I like the running joke. Like it's maybe the first movie to like just like reference like Buscemi's looks, right? Because throughout the movie, people say he was odd looking or funny looking.
Funny looking.
Like, how? And they can't describe how. All they know is that Steve Buscemi's weird looking, but nobody knows how to describe how. Oh, just weird. I don't know. Which is pretty funny.
Yeah, one of the movies that probably, you know, got his career started. I mean, on the, you know, big time.
Yeah.
Is this? I believe that the role was written for him in mind. So
Carl Showalter.
Lots of great surnames in this too.
Yeah, our main character's name is Gunderson.
Lundegaard.
Gunderson. William H. Macy is Lundegaard.
Gustafson.
Yeah. There's so many hockey players named Gustafson from like Sweden. So yeah, I've always been really attuned to like Swedish names because various hockey players.
Grimsrud.
Yeah. The one that stands out, I guess, is the guy with the Japanese name.
Yeah.
Like Yanagita, but of course he's from there, so he talks just like all the rest of them, which is funny.
Oh, don't you know?
It's funny when you talk about certain movies that like have a ton of cursing in them. Sometimes, you know, you can do like a count. You know, some of those movies like Wolf of Wall Street has like 1 billion F words in it, right?
Yeah.
It's like right up there for F words. I think it's come down that like combining just that movie with Superbad has made like Jonah Hill, like he's said fuck in more times in a movie than like any other actor ever, which is pretty funny.
I don't doubt it.
But anyway, this movie has some swearing, but I think what's funny is like this movie must have the word yeah in it more than any other movie. There isn't like a single yes in this movie. No one says yes. I mean, we're all North American people, Anglophones. We say yeah. We say yeah all the time, but that doesn't mean we never say yes. These people never say yes. And they also throw yeah in when it isn't needed, right? They'll just add it on. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Just like as a, you know, I guess the A, the Canadian A, people would equate that to.
I guess in a similar way, yeah.
Almost like a punctuation at the end of the sentence.
Yeah. Think we should go out of town, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think so. It's a good restaurant, yeah. Yeah, it is, yeah, yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Like when the father-in-law comes over and he's like, "Is he gonna stay for dinner?" I'm like, "Oh, I think so, Dad. You want to stay for dinner?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
When I say no, people say, "Are you Santa Claus?" And I say no, but they go, "No, no, I'm not Santa Claus."
But
so I get the charm of the movie. It has a lot of charm because it's an interesting, you know, it's like a black comedy, right? It's like an interesting juxtaposition of some, serious crime and some serious violence, but with some of that small town quirkiness. Like, I get it.
Right, right. It is classified as a dark comedy or black comedy. I don't really get a lot of that out of it. I mean, there are parts that are really funny, but I don't know. I don't know. I guess yeah.
I guess it just comes from like those interactions being more funny because of the setting of the movie. It's like, if this
Yeah.
was set in New York City or Chicago, it wouldn't be
Right.
like this. But since it's set here, these people have this certain way of talking and interacting with each other, so that even when they're dealing with serious things, it still comes out. And I will say another thing I like about the movie is like it's not the only movie to do this, and I think of things like I've seen Stephen King do it a few times in some of his books that would be movies and stuff. Is like the idea of like when you have something that's like, because we were talking about, of course, the noirs and stuff typically taking place in big cities and things, but this proves that stuff like this happens out in the country too. I do like stories that show like cops that are from like small little places where like nothing ever happens, and then something serious like murders happen. And I do like that they show that just because they aren't dealing with it all the time doesn't mean they're incompetent idiots. Because you seem to get that from a lot of other movies and TVs. It seems to be just like, like the cops from New York or LA are like so much smarter when it comes to this because they deal with it all the time. And it's just like, there's never been a murder in this town. And now the cops have no idea. Like, and that's really what, Frances McDormand's Marge Gunderson character sort of embodies, and that maybe you underestimate her. One, not just because she wears her job, but also because she's a woman and things like that. Is like, it's like, oh well, she doesn't, she's not gonna be able to handle this case, and she has that way of talking to people that maybe puts them at ease and makes them think, makes them underestimate her. So I do like that angle. I like it when they show that like just because cops are like, from maybe a small place where not much happens, it doesn't mean like they aren't up to solving a bigger, more serious crime if they have to.
Right. Yeah, she's got like I don't know, a really like kind, yeah, I don't like a teacher or something, some odd, job, but she's really a pretty badass detective at the end of the day. She puts all that together and solves it. But yeah, not to jump around too much, but she's not even introduced to her character until after the I guess highway patrolman, whatever, the policeman gets killed, and then the other two people as well, and that's like past 30 minutes in, so it's the third end of the movie before she even gets introduced.
Yeah,
and she's like the main character.
Yeah, some movies do that, but it is more rare to introduce your main character so late in. But I mean, still a big enough role. She actually won Best Actress for us. As I was talking about the critical acclaim this movie won. It had 7 Oscar nominations, and it got 2. She got it for Best Actress, and the Coens got it for Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah, William H. Macy was nominated as well, wasn't
he? Yeah, I think so. Best Supporting Actor, I guess.
And he steals the show, and this was one of his first big movies, I remember.
This is like the oldest thing I know he's in, I think. I know he's been around longer. I'm just going to take a quick look at his career and see. Because, I mean, he did stuff in the 80s, but I don't know any of it. He's in the 1993 movie Benny and June, which I think is we were talking about him last show, Johnny Depp.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that movie, but I don't really remember it. I don't remember him. The Client must be a small role.
Yeah, I think it was relatively smaller roles.
Yeah, it's all small roles. Like he's in Mr. Holland's Opus the year before. It's like as the vice principal. Yes, these are small roles. He's some doctor in the Client. Small roles. I think this is probably his first substantial role. Huh. I didn't even know this. He must just like have like a role with like no speaking parts in the movie War Games as a NORAD officer. That's funny. I'll have to watch for that next time I watch it. But yeah, this was definitely this movie. And then after that, he started to have some. Yeah, this was definitely the jumping off point for him because like right after this, he was in Air Force One. Not a major character, but still.
Yeah, I remember him in Air Force One.
Yeah, Boogie Nights. He's the father in Pleasantville, which might be my favorite role of his.
Oh, Boogie Nights. I think that's great in that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite role of his is in Pleasantville. I really like him as the TV father. Where's my dinner?
Yeah, apparently he campaigned pretty hard to get the role, so um,
Yeah.
it worked out for him. He was born to play it. It looks like, he nails all of the weird mannerisms that. Not Lester, that's the other one. Jerry Lundegaard.
Yeah.
Uh, that it's got guilty written all over his face, right, at all times. Like
Yeah.
he does a really bad job of acting like he wasn't responsible for any of this stuff. But
hasn't been anything since 2017. I was like, why? It's like, oh yeah, he's kind of dealing with his own situation now, isn't he? Not to laugh at that.
Still on. The show Shameless, I think, is still on, so maybe one reason why also.
Yeah, Shameless has been running for 11 seasons. Wow. So yeah, I guess that's the only sort of thing he's done since 2017.
Does he have some personal problems going on or something?
Oh, yeah. Who's he married to? Do you know who he's married
Not even sure.
Okay, well, he's married to pretty well-known actress, Felicity Huffman.
Okay.
And you might have heard of this. There's a big admissions scandal about like bribing colleges and stuff to get their. So they were one of the ones that were caught doing it, and Huffman actually got like a jail sentence. Although I don't think she did more than like a couple weeks. But anyway, he was obviously involved too. But I guess they prosecuted the wife. But they were two of the bigger people in that whole college admissions scandal from like a year or two ago.
Yeah, I remember the other lady was like the Full House, right?
Yeah, her. She's one of the other. They were like the other big ones, but yeah. But,
can you imagine how often that kind of crap happens? Like, it's like widespread.
Oh yeah.
Buying,
but it when it blows up when the parents are both like celebrities, right?
Mm-hmm.
In March 2019, it was reported that Macy and Huffman had agreed to have Huffman pay $15,000 to have someone take an entrance exam, greatly improving the scores taken on the test in order to have a better chance of her daughter getting into college. Huffman was indicted on fraud and conspiracy charges as part of a wider federal investigation of college admissions bribery, which is a whole thing you can read about, and that includes the people you just mentioned. For undisclosed reasons, no charges were filed against Macy. September 13, 2019, judge in Boston sentenced Huffman to 14 days in federal prison, serving 12 days. As of October 2020, when Huffman completed the other parts of her sentence, which included 250 hours of community service and a year of supervised release, no charges have been filed against Macy. So Macy never himself got charged with anything, but obviously it was not good for his image to be wrapped up in that.
14 days in jail. That's almost a joke, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, I get it. It's a white collar type crime, right? Yeah. It's not like violence or anything like that, but I mean, it's still wrong, and it's a good example, like you said, it's widespread of like people who are already in positions of power and privilege abusing it even more to like rig the game, and like the game is already rigged in your favor anyway, and now you're like, no wonder people are so upset. It's just so insulting.
I mean, so many things are,
and the daughter did not know, by the way. She didn't know at all. Like, she was mortified to find that out. Like, this was completely without the daughter's knowledge, so you feel bad for her.
I mean, all these things are like drenched in nepotism anyway. So, that type of stuff. Like, you're like the daughter of two movie stars. So you've already got more than a foot in the door already. So
yeah,
we need to buy your admission. Come on.
Yeah, it's pretty lame. But again, it comes also with their like super high, part of their image, right? Like their daughter has to,
right.
Their daughter also has to super excel and be amazing because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking a little about that before we went on air, Jacob. I guess I don't remember, like, you're probably right, even the cold-blooded sociopath. I hadn't seen it long, because I was just saying the same thing, like how, like, one thing I appreciate about the world of Fargo, like, the show and the movie is, like, how, characters aren't necessarily black and white. There's not necessarily... I mean, villains are usually villains, but a lot of the heroes aren't exactly heroes, and they do things I knew that Martin Freeman's character was a damned coward. I remember that much. I couldn't remember some of the. I'll have to watch it again because I'm sure you're right that he probably
It's
did.
that they're really similar, like in their just odd mannerisms. I think I almost kind of thought that. Damn it, I'm getting the names mixed up. The one from the TV show was supposed to be Jerry Lundergaard at first, the character, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Lester
originally they
Nygaard.
did like they did some sort of way back like in the late 90s they did like a pilot for a show that did not involve the Coens and it was supposed to use the same characters.
I'd love to track that down just to see what it's like. I think it's a TV movie. It's considered a TV movie now.
Yeah, it had Kathy Bates was in there. Yeah, directed by Kathy Bates. It
Oh,
starred Edie Falco as Marge Gunderson.
I think I may remember hearing about that now. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a pilot in 1997.
I don't
But
care for Edie Falco, but
yeah, me neither. The Coens weren't involved, so I guess it would not be really considered official. I don't know. In any case, yeah, they've been talking about a show for a long time before it actually wound up happening. It is one of the, there's a lot of movies where I think like spinning it off into a show doesn't work, but I think Fargo's good because it's just telling more of the same kind of stories and sort of the same sort of environment. And while there's a certain amount of overlap and continuity, they're still standalone stories.
I don't think the show would work without Noah Hartley. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, when you think about taking something as simple as this movie is, 90-minute movie, turning it into a series, I can't ever process that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, much more complicated. Like nine or
Yeah.
10 episodes. The episodes are like 50 minutes long. Yeah, you create a lot more. But I mean, I guess the success of the show is as different as it is. You still can trace it back to the source material, and it still has the same feel and everything like that. Yeah, season 2 is the one I like best of the first 3. I haven't seen the 4th yet, but I don't remember it. I remember it takes place in like 1979, and there might be some sort of like power struggle or gang war. But I need to watch again. I'm gonna watch both the first 2 seasons probably immediately, like this week, because I just finished the 3rd for the first time. And since we're doing the show, I'm kind of in that mode anyway.
Yeah, I think you watched the first one again also, didn't you? Did you go back and watch the first season?
No, I just did the 3rd. Now I'm gonna start.
Okay.
So I'll do the 1st and 2nd, probably in that order. Although you don't need to necessarily watch them in that order. Just
I'm on the 2nd again now. So
yeah. I really like the 2nd one, even though I forget a lot of it. I remember that I liked it. It's probably my favorite Fargo thing. So I have to say, I mean, like I said, I'm happy to praise the movie, but at the end of the day, I don't really love it the way a lot of people do. It doesn't. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's something very. It really affects people, and they really remember it. It becomes a big staple of pop culture. Yeah, I don't want to get confused because I do actively dislike other Coen brother movies. I don't dislike this movie, but I just don't. I don't really get the huge appeal. And then when I say appeal, that's wrong because it makes it sound like I don't get why any woman like it. No, I like it. There's just something I'm missing because this movie again. People are very passionate about this movie. This is like among people say this is one of their favorite movies and stuff like that. And to me, it's kind of an average movie, but I might be misunderestimating it. Not misunderestimating, just underestimating it. Sorry.
Well, Tom Hanks says it's a perfect movie.
No, can't argue with Tom Hanks. His son is in one of the shows, right?
First season, I believe.
The acting one, not the crazy rapper. Speaking of like what you can do when your parents are celebrities, it's like I'll just be a rapper because that's the cool thing for like lame 20-something white guys to do when they don't have to worry about money or anything.
Yeah, we've been down that rabbit hole many a time on this show.
Yeah, Chet Hanks. Still can't believe he's a real person. Like I can't believe he's a real person, especially considering like who his father is. Like I get not being like your father, but Jesus.
He's an actor too, believe it or not. I'm sure his father being Tom Hanks didn't hurt.
Yeah.
I think on the show he plays a rapper, so it's really not that much of a stretch for him. I don't remember the name of it.
Since rapping is definitely his calling.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you say that name? Peter, it's just Stormare?
I think so.
Yeah. I'm so used to seeing him later, like older. So seeing him in this movie kind of weirds me out because he seems so different. He is actually Swedish, um, and has one of
Jake,
the most, and he has like the most muddled accent I've ever heard in my life. Like, tell me what accent that is, because
I
I've
know.
heard plenty of people from Sweden. I watch hockey. I've heard the Swedes talk, and they don't sound like him. Like, what is his life experience? Like, he doesn't use it in this movie. In this movie, he has basically sort of an American accent. But when Peter Stormare speaks with his regular, ordinary accent, he sounds like he's from like another planet. Like, I
Yeah,
cannot tie it to any accent at all. He's in that game Until Dawn, and he weirds me out so much in that game. He's the
it's a great game.
psychiatrist. Yeah, it's a really fun game. It's like playing a horror movie with choices.
Jake says that this is the role that he associates Peter Stormare with, and
Right, yeah. I flipped to the chat. I didn't read it quickly, but I saw the name pop up, and yeah.
I would agree with that. But I would associate him with Minority Report. That's the movie I always think of. That I think we've done that on here before.
Yes, we did. We did a Minority Report episode.
He's the doctor that takes his or swaps his eyes out.
Yeah, he's really creepy.
He's really
He's like
gross.
he's like the illegal underground surgery guy.
Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys that's like, oh, it's that guy, and you're like, I've seen him in all these movies, but he's never like the main
Right.
star.
Definitely sort of a character actor type movie. But yeah, see, I probably don't even think of it like I do think of that scene, I guess, but I guess he really didn't come into my consciousness until even later. Like pretty much all the things I think of him of are like probably like mid 2000s on, even though obviously he's been around and he's just in tons of stuff. A well-traveled character actor, and I mean, Fargo's a great place for character actors. It's not really a place for leading types. It's a place for character actors to shine in. Hence, somebody like Steve Buscemi having a major role. And I mean, I guess that's another thing about the appeal of Fargo is like feels more real because it lacks some of those like really obvious leading man and leading lady types. You know, you don't put a you don't put a Brad Pitt in a Fargo.
Yeah.
You know.
Not that you couldn't do it though. I mean,
you could do it because Pitt is actually a versatile actor, and he, but you couldn't have him like as he normally is, like as the main guy. You could have him as like some weird criminal, and I don't know, do him up because he did that in True Romance, right? Well, he's not a criminal in that, but he's the like weird like stoner guy. Yeah, he's like a stoner in that. But I just mean Pitt is but I just mean These movies or shows, or whatever, like they're not about following the handsome, rugged male lead or beautiful, glamorous female lead. Not that there couldn't be an attractive female in there, but it's done in a different way, and sort of a more real world way, I suppose.
As you know, season 2 has got Patrick Wilson, Ted Danson, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, whatever his name is. The Matt Damon ripoff looking like guy.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Jesse Plemons, something.
I mean, I guess I knew that at the time. I pretty much forgot. Patrick Wilson's one of the only actors I can remember. Another really well-traveled guy.
I was just like, whoa, wow, Ted Danson's in here too. I'd forgotten about him.
Yeah. Apparently in the third season, that like her sort of, I don't know if it's her partner or what, but like that dim-witted cop that she's always having to explain stuff to in the third season. Mm-hmm. Originally that was going to be Jim Gaffigan, but then he couldn't do it because of scheduling conflicts. Would have been interesting. Yeah, he has that ancestry.
Yeah.
To fit into that thing. It's almost too soon, Jake. I mean, I literally just watched the last episode like a little more than an hour ago. I found 3 confusing, but I liked it. And I don't know if it's confusing because it's told in that way or I just didn't follow it well enough. Because there were a few things that like I never understood once it was over. Like there's like a prologue at the very beginning, in East Germany about some guy. And that never really seems to get any follow-up. I mean, eventually you find out like some Russian guy might have something to do with that, but it's never made clear. And it's also not made clear why the guy in the restaurant or wherever they are recognizes him. That whole scene is so weird to me. Just out of nowhere, this guy that we haven't seen before is talking to Nikki or whatever the hell her name is. And it's really, I don't know. There's a few moments in that show that just feel like they just dropped the script and went off in another direction for a while. I mean, there's a whole episode. The whole third episode is that. Like the whole thing is like it's a fuck up, right? Like he says, go to this address and rob my brother. He screws up the address, but he finds the address of somebody else who coincidentally has the same last name, has nothing to do with anything, fucks it up, kills the guy. And once again, coincidentally, she's the sort of stepfather. He's the sort of stepfather of the main cop on the show, blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole episode about her trying to find out about it. And she goes down to LA because she finds out her stepfather actually used to have go by a different name, and he was a sci-fi author.
Yeah, that
and
was weird.
and
That was
it's not like it's not interesting to watch, but it has no bearing on the plot whatsoever. The only thing I can say is I guess it's like real life in that, yes, sometimes in real life coincidences happen and they don't have anything to do with what you're focused on, right? Like it has nothing to do with the actual plot. It's just a coincidence. But we get a whole episode where we find her uncovering his past. He was like this up and coming young sci-fi writer, and then he gets like bamboozled by this couple of scam artists that say they're going to make a movie, but they just keep taking his money. And the girl seduces him and breaks his heart, and like it has nothing to do with anything, and it's an entire episode. But okay, and then there was just a few things that I didn't put together, like in the very end. Like some things I think were, like I said, I don't want to feel stupid, but sometimes I think I didn't put things together that other people would have. Because I sometimes do get mad when a show or a movie like feels the need to specifically tell us something. It's like, no, you can put the pieces together. You don't need the show to explicitly tell you. But I kind of felt like in the third season, there were things I wished they explicitly told me because I wasn't sure if the guesses I was making were right. Like the whole thing about like the IRS getting that stuff, the evidence sent to them with her number. They're up and she's like, I didn't call you. I don't know who did that. And I don't know who did that. Did Nikki do that? Did Nikki even know the cop's number to do that? Like, I don't know, but I guess, I don't know. So a few things like that I wasn't sure of. I also, that guy who I would never have known was from the other season because my memory's not good enough, but I accidentally read about it. So that guy who, Wrench or whatever his name is, the deaf guy that helps, I keep calling her Nikki, I hope it's Nikki, helps her out. I understand why at first he helps her out. They're chained together. And bad guys are chasing them. He helps her escape and fight them off. But then after that, he becomes her partner for no reason that is ever explained. Like there's no conversation, there's no narration, nothing. Just for now on, it's like he's partners with her for whatever reason. And then we find out in a time jump, 5 years later, he's still working on her behalf. And I have no idea why. But yeah, so there's a few things that left me scratching my head about that. And I have to say the main villain is one of the worst stupid villains I've ever seen in a show.
Oh.
I couldn't stand every fucking time he's on screen, he veers off into some long, overblown conversation with something. Be like, in Central America, the cane toes. Like, fuck off with your stories. Every single episode, he has, if at least one, sometimes two, meandering, boring, like, I don't know, illusions. And I just hate it so much. So that's my main problem with the thing. I hated that guy so much. Like, again, he's the bad guy. You're not supposed to root for him or cheer for him. But I just hated the way he talked so much. I hated that he would just go off in random directions and blather on about bullshit. He'd be like, have you ever been to, I don't know, the Black Forest? Because they're like, I don't care, man. You sound like Wilson from goddamn Home Improvement. I still liked it, but that was my main issue problem. One was, I thought it was maybe a little incoherent, but maybe that's on me. Maybe I didn't watch closely enough. But I will say, I could not stand that guy. I hated his meandering, blathering on about stuff. I really didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
fine with it, but
all the Fargos have to rile, whether it's a movie or the show. Like, it's important to like kill off like about 80% of the characters before it's over. So, that's one thing about Fargo is you can't say I like this character because they're probably going to die.
That show in particular, I think, is plagued by a problem that's very common with American television because they all want to go in with set numbers of episodes, even before anything's written. So that's going to translate into a few episodes just being, padding. So
yeah. I mean, I don't remember feeling that way about the first two seasons. They seemed tighter, I think. Again, my memory's hazy. Need to rewatch them, but I don't remember feeling that way watching them. Like I said, I don't really have any criticisms of the second season. I need to see it again because I can't even remember what the story was. I just remember that I really enjoyed it. So I will be watching the first and second season in short order, probably over the next few days because I just finished the third. I'm interested in the fourth. It's not available on anything I have yet. That's set in like way back in the past too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That appeals to me too. I like the idea of
Uh,
something further
the
back.
50s.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I like that.
But it's like, like UK shows or, shows from other countries, like they don't necessarily go by that formula. Like first season may have 9 episodes, second season may have 5,
Yeah,
and I like that.
that
I
is
think
better because that way you just tell the story you're trying to tell, and you don't have to
exactly.
worry about fitting things in or stretching things out.
And I look at some shows, I'm like, God damn, how did y'all do like 25 episodes a season? And it stayed good, like that's got to be impossible.
Yeah, because I remember I felt like obviously the third episode wasn't bad, but it doesn't really move the plot forward. And it
Mm-hmm.
was either the seventh or eighth episode, just very little actually happens. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the seventh or the eighth. So, yeah, I mean, they went for 10. It seems like they probably could have done it in 8,
Mm-hmm.
probably.
I
And
definitely
I
could have
don't.
left out the sci-fi episodes you were talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I kind of interested in that. I kind
Yeah,
of get a charge out of it, but I kept waiting for some later callback to it or something to maybe
yeah.
make it matter more. But no. So all I can say that I appreciate about it is I guess it's more true to life because sometimes things are just dead ends or
Mm-hmm.
coincidences, but it's not necessarily entertaining to follow up on that. Also, I didn't think the math added up. So I guess that actor was supposed to be a lot older. I thought he was supposed to be like in his early 20s, but apparently he could not be because if you're in your early 20s in like the mid 70s, you're not 82 in 2010. So I guess he was a lot older than I thought he was. Like they made it off like he was young and naive, and the guy called him kid and stuff. So I thought he was pretty young, like under 25, but I guess not
Yeah.
because he's an old man in 2010. But
Well, we haven't really gotten into the plot of this movie, so
right. So it's kind of like again something they would echo in the later shows was it usually has to do with somebody like there's real criminals, but then there's people that like aren't criminals that try to do criminal stuff and they suck at it, which is
mm-hmm.
really what's going on here. Yeah, so that's what we get with William H. Macy's character Jerry, who
So
works at a car dealership owned by his wife's husband, who you can tell does not respect him very much.
right. And see, contrary to the TV show here, his wife does seem to like genuinely love him and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and he seems to love her as well. But he's gotten into some financial troubles. It doesn't really go into detail about whatever he's got going on, but he needs money.
Yeah.
So his initial thing was trying to work buy some property with his father-in-law and somehow, make money off it that way. But that's kind of fallen through. So he has this idea to stage a kidnapping of his wife and then keep the ransom money as it was the intention.
Right.
But
Because
obviously,
his father being really rich, like his father has the money. So the idea is like his father will pay
mm-hmm,
will pay the ransom. That way I can pocket most of it, and
mm-hmm,
I'll give a certain amount as the fee to the kidnappers, which again is pretty wishful thinking and naive. And as you said, he doesn't have any problem with his wife, and yet he still feels the need to put her in harm's way, which obviously backfires horribly. But his idea is like it just go smoothly. They'll hold her. Yeah, she'll be scared, but they'll hold
yeah.
her and they won't do anything to her. And then the payoff will come, and then she'll come back. It does not go that way at all, of course. But he's pretty naive.
But that's what kicks the whole thing off. That's what brings these killers into Brainerd.
Right.
And
And well, the thing is, one of the guys working at the dealership, the Indian
mhm,
guy, he has like a criminal past. So he asked him to see if he could put him in touch with any of his criminal associates, and that's what happens. Then that's his way in, right? Because he's just some white collar guy working at a thing. Like he doesn't really know criminals, so that's his entry into that world. Is he's got this employee or whatever that can tell him some stuff.
Ship.
Yeah, Shep.
Yeah. So that's his whole. It starts off like bad because he's already an hour late for the meeting.
Yeah, it really
like
sets
in
the
this.
tone, right? It sets
Yeah,
the tone, and it's interesting because it sets up the dynamic pretty quickly too. Like he's just exasperated, trying to get them to listen to him. He's like, "That's not the deal," and stuff like that. And Steve Buscemi, Carl, he does most of the talking, whereas Gare, or however you say his name, Peter Stormare's character, he doesn't really talk much at all. He just sits there and listens to things, and he's always, "I'm not going to debate you, Jerry." And so it always comes down to, whenever there's an argument, he just says, "I'm not going to debate you. This is how it has to be, and that's what we're doing." And it's just like, but no. And yeah, so you do see them. You do see the actual kidnapping take place, and right from there, you're like, "Oh, this is not going to go smoothly."
that's pretty funny actually. That is some black comedy there. I can going on because she's sitting there watching TV and she's watching the guy like come over and break the window, and he starts breaking the window. Of course, she freaks out and then knocks herself out, falling down the stairs, wrapped in a shower curtain.
Yeah. Then later, when they take her out of the car to get her into the cabin, she's got the hood over her head. She just takes off, and they just watch her because she
Yeah,
can't go anywhere. They just laugh at her when she falls down. Or once again, I guess it's probably just Carl. The other guy does not really have much emotion going on. Which, I mean, again, is their dynamic. It's just a whole part where they're just on the road driving. And he's like, "Come on, we got to talk," or something like that. And the other guy won't talk to him. He's just like, "Fine, two can play at that game." And then he's saying how he won't talk, and then he just keeps talking. It's like completely silent. You'll see. See how you like it, buddy. Not another word. Yeah. I think it works because it's Steve Buscemi. He's good at that
yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah, he's great. This would have been like on the heels of Reservoir Dogs a little bit. So
A couple years after. I mean, he didn't really have much in between of note, I don't think. Let me take a look here, because again, he's in so many movies. I mean, he slowed down, but at one point, like he was in like 3 out of every 5 movies that came out.
yeah,
I mean, Reservoir Dogs was 92. This was shot in like the winter of 95. I mean, obviously he did have a small part in the other one, Pulp Fiction. I really liked him in Airheads, which was in '94. Uh, isn't that weird? Steve Buscemi walking that line, like he was
yeah,
part of like Tarantino's world, but he was also in the orbit of Adam Sandler.
yeah.
That always seems so interesting to me because he's in Airheads, and of course he's in Billy Madison. Too bad he didn't keep doing more. I mean, he's in The Wedding Singer. At the last, he's in Mr. Deeds. Yeah, so I mean, he hung around in this. I mean, just in small, little, tiny one-off roles, but still, it's
Right.
just kind of funny that he's kind of part of both those orbits in a way. I'll tell you, the first movie where, again, when I say this, I'm talking being aware. Like, there's plenty of times I've seen a movie when I was like a kid and had like an actor in it, but I mean, if I was young enough, I didn't pay attention or no. So the first time I was aware of Steve Buscemi was Con Air. I went to see Con Air in the theater, and he was sort of a joke character because he was the big scary cannibal, and it's just
Right.
this weird Steve Buscemi looking guy. And he's even gets like the last scene of the movie after everything's over. It's just like, "Oh yeah, what happened to the cannibal? Oh, he's free and he's in Vegas gambling. It's hilarious." That was that might not be the first time I saw him, but it was like the first time I was like aware of him. It was pretty funny.
It's like it's that guy. That's
Yeah.
kind of who he was to me for a little while. Before
Yeah.
I put a name to a face. 'Cause he,
I,
like you said, he was in everything.
and I mean, even though he is quirky and funny in this, like it's still a little bit more serious than of his roles. I would say my favorite like dramatic role of his is in Ghost World,
Oh yeah.
which is really great, which I haven't seen in a long time. Another movie from the year 2001, 20 years ago, my favorite year in film. But I mean, it was a long time coming. That like, isn't Steve Buscemi like the main? Was he like the main guy on Boardwalk Empire?
Yeah.
Like, see, that's sort of how these career arcs work for somebody like a character actor, right? You just in like for like decades, you're in dozens of movies as like the creepy guy, the weird guy. It's like finally, like you're like the main character. Like, you got to give him credit for sticking with it. Not like I'm saying it was all bad. I'm sure he enjoyed himself. I mean,
Yeah.
but still,
That's a good show.
It's neat to see. I never saw it, but it's neat to see him reach that level.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can say. I mean, his next movie's going to be the next Hotel Transylvania movie.
Oh, okay.
So
I've
yeah,
liked
he's never. Yeah, they're pretty good. I never saw the third. They're like the only thing Adam Sandler's done in the last like 20 years that I like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Steve Buscemi has always stayed in that orbit, which is funny. Although it's too bad he hasn't actually been in a Tarantino movie. I don't think in the 21st century.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, he's a guy that's got comedy chops. You wouldn't think it to look at him, but yeah, he's a funny guy.
I can't even remember the episode, but there's some episode of The Simpsons where Homer has a dream, and in the dream he meets Steve Buscemi. He's like, "Hi, Homer, I'm actor Steve Buscemi." He's like, "The guy that got fed into the woodchopper in Fargo?" And he's like, "Yup." And then they sing a song. I can't remember what's going on in it, but it's because I mean, I guess that's what like most people think of as Steve Buscemi. He's like the guy from Fargo, and he gets fed into the, or maybe it's the guy. He's like Mr. Pink or whatever. It's like, why do I gotta be called Mr. Pink? I mean, those are fine, but they're not what I think of when I think of him. Because I mean, there's just a huge array of stuff to think about when you think about a guy like Steve Buscemi. Even when sometimes his characters are just little like one-note jokes, they're still usually pretty good. They're pretty funny. Like in Billy Madison, he's like that guy that he calls up and like he turns out to be like crazy as it turns out. He's like, "I'm really sorry for picking on you." It's like, "Oh yeah, no problem." Then he like, and everything seems normal. It's like, "Yeah, we get coffee someday." Then you see he like leans over and he has this whole list of people he's gonna kill, and he scratches like Billy Madison off the list. And then he shows up at the end with a rifle. So even little things like that are pretty good.
I was just going through his filmography here. I know we're leaving something out, but and tons of stuff. And he's like a legit nice guy in real life, from what I've heard. You know, and he volunteered during the September 11th attacks.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
And didn't make a public media spectacle out of it.
Right.
Which he very well could have.
Yeah. What's funny is he's done some directing. And he directed 2 episodes of 30 Rock, including my favorite episode of 30 Rock. It's funny because he actually has a small role in a couple episodes of 30 Rock. So, but he didn't direct the ones he's in. So I don't know. But yeah, he actually directed my favorite episode of 30 Rock, which is the Leap Day episode, which I really enjoy. Which also features Jim Carrey, not in the episode itself, but in a fictional movie in the episode, a movie about Leap Day, which is so meta. It feels like it could be real. Because the whole thing in the world of 30 Rock is like, for some reason, Leap Day is considered like a big holiday.
Yeah.
And everybody wears like, and there's like a Santa Claus type guy called Leap Day William, and everybody dresses in like blue and yellow, and there's all these like, it's like as big as Christmas. There's like all these like traditions that come along with it, and there's this whole movie like that's on TV all day, like about Jim Carrey playing a guy who keeps turning into Leap Day William, and it seems like it could be real if Leap Day was actually a thing, which it's not.
Is that like a Santa Claus play?
It's like the Santa Claus, because there's even a whole scene where like he's like looking in the mirror and trying to get rid of the stuff on his face, and then it just keeps coming back, and it's Jim Carrey. It's really great. It's like the best thing you'll ever see of Jim Carrey playing Jim Carrey. So yeah, it's a really fun episode that I like a lot.
I think I've seen all the episodes of that show, but I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that's my favorite, and for whatever reason, it is directed by Steve Buscemi.
Wow,
which is pretty cool.
But so they wind up killing the cop and 2 witnesses, and that's when the movie kind of gets started as far as Margie gets introduced.
Yeah. There's a whole callback to that in the third season that I just watched, because the whole thing is like after when the bad guys or whatever, I'll just use those words, attack the prison bus, to get at her. After that sort of goes sideways, this couple in like an SUV drive by and slow down and look and then they drive. And kind of the same thing happens. The bad guys chase them down and run them off the road and kill them for being witnesses, which is the same thing that happens here, which really sets the tone. It's like, uh-oh, his wife is definitely not safe. Like these guys aren't just like criminals that'll kidnap somebody. These guys are like killers.
Right.
So even if he's only 63, I would have thought he was actually older.
Yeah.
So he's got years left of doing good stuff.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's the scenes with oh shit, I've lost my names here, but Carol, I forget the her husband's name. Uh, oh fuck.
Which one's Carol?
No, Carol. Her husband's real name. Damn it, it's not pulling up on here. Anyway, Gunderson, Marge Gunderson's husband.
Oh,
Like
okay.
they've got a whole like really interesting dynamic, to where she's obviously pregnant, so yeah, he just wants her to eat all the time, and is constantly bringing food. And
Hmm.
I think every scene they're in, they're either sleeping in the bed or eating.
Yeah, I think so.
But it was kind of
And
interesting
then
the
when
way
she
that.
get after he makes her eat eggs, she gets to the station. They're like, "Did you eat?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I ate. I had eggs." And I'm like, "Oh, good, yeah."
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, yes, eggs are good. But yeah, I was gonna say, so she's 7 months pregnant. Is that normal for a
Is that
cop
normal?
on duty? Is it normal for a cop on duty who is 7 months pregnant to still come into work?
Maybe in a small town. I mean,
Now I know that they do stuff for dramatic purposes because I watched the show um, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. In
mhm.
the season finale of season 7, the two main characters, Jake and Amy, their baby is born. And of course, because it's a sitcom or whatever, they have to have it born under weird hijinks. There's a citywide blackout, and they can't get to the hospital. So she winds up having the baby at the station. My question is, why was she at the station? She is 9 months pregnant, and she's still in at the station working. Is that normal?
I don't think that's normal.
Because I
But I'm gonna
mean,
assuming it's a normal pregnancy. I think a lot of women work pretty much up until.
yeah, but cops?
Yeah, yeah, I
I
agree with you.
mean, and I know women who are pregnant work to a certain thing. I don't know about 7 months. I guess it depends on the job. And I also don't know how it works in the US. Like, do they even give maternity leave?
Oh yeah, it's required to give maternity leave. I don't think it's required to give paid maternity leave. But
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got paid maternity leave here, and I'm pretty sure it actually starts before the baby is born, like when they are heavily pregnant. I think that's
mhm,
when it starts because they don't really expect a woman who is 8 9 months pregnant to come in and work for
mhm.
most jobs. Certainly not a cop. Like I can't, like I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Like it's one thing that's neat about the movie. It's like, oh, she's a small town cop. She's a woman. People are gonna underestimate her. She's also heavily pregnant. It's kind of good she doesn't wind up having to chase what's his name through the snow. Because I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think anybody here works past 7 months either. And like I said, I could let it go for other jobs. I'm just thinking for a cop, like she's not like at a desk doing administrative work. She's out,
right.
she's out chasing down leads and doing interviews, and of course coming after the suspects and stuff. I mean, it is somewhat. It's more realistic than a lot of like actiony movies, right? Like she finds the guy, he runs. She makes a very impressive shot. I think she makes a very impressive shot because he's a good distance away from her running out into the lake, and she manages with some sort of revolver or something like that to hit him in the leg, which I think is a pretty skillful shot to bring him down. So it's not like it turns into some big action or chase type scene. But that
And I
is
get
one thing I wonder about it.
it was probably just to add to the story, because it's constantly referenced. So
Yeah.
her being pregnant, but maybe that a small town like that, she normally wouldn't have a whole lot to do. So she probably wouldn't be like working like crazy unless there wasn't this,
Right, and they might be
triple.
kind of understaffed, you might think. Like they
Yeah.
just don't have the manpower or whatever. Like I said, I don't find it to be a huge like hole. It's just something I generally wonder about because I've seen it show up in a few things, and I don't think that would happen in Canada. Is
Mhm.
kind of my point. But certain jobs, I think. But I mean, not past 7 months, I don't think so. What's weird
Mhm.
is I never see pregnant women. People are being born all the time. I never see them. These women, they're not going to jobs. They're not even going out in public. I haven't seen a pregnant woman in public in like 5 years, at least noticeably pregnant. Obviously, I'm sure I've been around women who are pregnant, but I mean, women that it's very obvious they're pregnant, where you could even ask and you wouldn't look like an idiot because there's no way they're not pregnant. Not that I would ask, but. Like I haven't seen
Never
it.
ask.
Yeah, never ask. That's a big rule. When are you due? What?
Yeah.
That's in like Scary Movie 3, where they're doing the whole War of the Worlds thing. His ex-wife comes to drop off the kids, and he's just like, oh, I think it's Molly Shannon. And he's like, oh, you're pregnant again. It looks good on you. And she's like, what? I'm not pregnant. And he's like, oh, and he goes into the house. Not exactly a comedy classic, but I do like that moment. Merge Gunderson.
Margie?
Oh, how you doing, Margie? But I mean, one of the things that make, as we said, we were talking about like just the settings and the mannerism. It's why it makes some scenes that would be boring in like other movies more entertaining. There's a whole part where like a cop gets called in to some guy. No, he talks about something we didn't actually see, but it's an interaction some bartender had with Steve Buscemi's character, right? Where Steve Buscemi had come in and was trying to find out where he like get laid, and he's like, where I can get some action. That's a really great scene where he's just telling the thing, and he's just like, yo, now you think I'm some kind of jerk for asking, but he didn't say jerk. And he's like, oh yeah, I know what he said. And he said, the last fellow that gave me attitude, he's dead. And he said, what do you think of that? And I didn't say anything for a while. And then I said, well, doesn't sound like too good of a deal for that fella. So it's so funny. And he's just like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. So I mean,
crazy out there by the lake.
It's funny because it reminds me of like those scenes played really serious in something like Law and Order. They always have that scene in Law and Order where they come down to the mechanic or whoever and have that conversation. And it's all, very intense back and forth. And this is just like that, but all the intensity is taken out. And it's just like, oh yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, that is a good scene.
But
is that how she finds out where they are?
I think so. Yeah, because he was the first one to mention. He says, I'm out on the lake. He says, I'm going crazy out on the lake. And first he says this lake, and he said, well, he's a little closer, so I assumed it was this lake. So that's why she's driving around in that area. Yeah, like they don't know exactly where. She's just sort of driving, and then she happens to see the car and pulls over. So it is that information. It is that information that leads to her knowing to go to that like general area. Because I mean, it makes sense. Because I mean, out there would not be a lot of like houses and stuff. So actually taking a drive around, it does make sense. It's not like you're just wasting your time.
She shows up right when it's getting good.
Yeah, the infamous wood chipping. Okay, so here's a question. So throughout the movie, it's pretty clear. I mean, these two criminals, they're criminals, and they don't really like each other. Right. They kind of bicker back and forth through the whole thing. And then in the end, of course, after he got shot in the face by the father, he's really mad because they have that disagreement. He says, like, well, we're not just splitting the money. The car is part of it, so we have to split the car. And he's just like, he's so mad after everything he's been through, Steve Buscemi. He's like, Carl, how the fuck do you split a car? He's getting really mad. He's like, I want to get out of here. I'm taking the car. And he doesn't really answer him. So then he says, are we square or what? And then he shows the gun, like, it's like, are we square? And he never answers. Do you think it was that conversation is the only reason he killed him? Or do you think he would have killed him all along? Do you think that pushed him over the edge and he's like, no, we're supposed to split the car, you fucker? Or do you think he was always just going to kill him and take all the money?
That's a good question. You could always see him thinking, like, he was always a silent one, so he was always thinking about how much he hated Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, because on the one hand, it seems like, well, obviously he's a ruthless killer, and he doesn't like Steve Buscemi. So it seems to make sense that, yeah, why wouldn't he kill him to take the money? On the other hand, since he doesn't talk and he's silent and doesn't portray much emotion, and since he says that thing about the car, it almost seems to suggest that he has some sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to say code of honor, but something like that, where like he would have taken all that shit from him, but when he broke the deal, that's when he decides to kill him. It's like, well, technically you're taking the car and we agreed we'd split the car. You're not splitting it. And then you threaten me with the gun. So part of me actually leans that way, even though the other is just as a likely explanation, because we know, he kills people, he doesn't care. And that's what makes the conversation, the one-sided conversation at the end, so interesting. Because she's just saying, all these people dead. And for what? A little bit of money. She's like, there's more to life than a little bit of money. Didn't you know that? It's like, no, he didn't know that. He's a cold-blooded sociopath, and he doesn't really care about human life at all,
Yeah, so he the father goes out to with the ransom money. He gets killed, like you
Yeah,
said,
he
by
wasn't supposed
the
to
shooting.
go. Like that's the other thing. Like to keep them, to keep them in the dark. He said the whole thing is it has to be me. They'll only deal with me. And of course, the father-in-law doesn't like this for any number of reasons. One, it's his money. It's his
Right.
daughter. So he hates the idea. So he hates the idea of a weak guy like Jerry. It already bothers him enough that he married his daughter, I'm sure, of doing it. So he's
Hmm.
just like, I'll handle this. I like how he's even like rehearsing on the way. He's just like, here's your money. Where's my daughter? he
Yeah.
actually he actually says the line
Right.
at least once beforehand. And he's smart enough. Well, I don't know if it's smart or not. It depends upon how good you are with a gun and how well you know the situation. In some situations, it might be smart to take a gun. In his situation, it's not smart to take the gun, and he
No.
winds up paying for it. I have to say, like though, how unlucky is that? You've been shot and you fall down. Somebody leans over you. You pull out a gun and shoot, and you only manage to like blast them
Yeah.
through the cheek.
Yeah.
Like that's bad luck, man. Like if you tried to do that, you probably wouldn't.
Oh, you
But
should.
that happened.
Yeah.
You just shoot them square in the face and kill them.
Right.
But
Right.
but bad luck. I get it. Bad luck happens, and it certainly happens to him.
That's
And that
when
Carl has to
he
go through the rest of the movie with his face torn open.
and then he goes and he just straight up kills the parking attendant.
Yeah, who he'd had an interaction with earlier.
Yeah.
Again, it's a good reminder. It is a good reminder of like what real criminals are like. Like we live in a society, and we don't love it. We don't
Right.
love all the stupid little rules. We don't just think it's great to pay fines and
Yeah.
do this and that and the other thing. But the difference is criminals have this weird sense of entitlement about them and this weird sense of taking everything personally. When the guy says, "Well, even though you didn't park, you still have to pay
Mhm.
$4," that he just flips out over it. Like normally socially well-adjusted people might be annoyed by this, but we accept it. It's like, yeah, that's how it works. But that's the difference between like, yeah, normal law-abiding people and criminals. Criminals take even shit like that personally. And you're like,
Yeah.
fuck no, I'm not gonna. And he
Yeah.
turns into a whole thing. He's like, here's your $4. You're a fucking failure in life. You think you're some sort of authority figure? It's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think he thinks that at all. I think he knows he's a parking lot attendant who has a boring job and doesn't make much money, and it's not even his $4. But that's not the way criminals like that think, right?
Right.
You see it all the time, or at least the more low-level criminals that are always getting into trouble and going to jail for various offenses because they can't even obey like normal things like that. So it's just
Basic. Yeah.
so it just makes him so. I'm sure, like after getting shot in the face, he's just like, "Fuck it, I'll kill another guy." It's like
Yeah.
I'm sure he's really happy to kill that guy. But yeah.
And then he's oh man, the scene where he's putting like the napkins on his wound, that looks so painful to me.
Yeah, he
He
sells it
really
really well.
sells it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely winced watching that because he has to like pull it off to put a fresh one on.
Right.
Like, oh man,
And
and he
then
can't go to the hospital.
he finds out that it's his like $1 million, not 40,000, what they thought it was going to be. So
But
he
yeah,
buries it out in the
just out
Great
in like
White.
just some snow by the highway. Yeah,
Yeah, puts the famous you call that the ice scratcher thing. I'm sure it has a name
ice
for it.
pick,
Is that it?
or
Okay.
or is it the thing for the car?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh shit, what is that called? I use it all the time. It has a name. I can't think.
But he sticks that in
Might
the
might
snow.
just be ice scraper.
Ice scraper, yeah.
Yeah, I think the very first time I saw the movie, I like missed that part, which is like a huge part of the plot, right? Because the whole thing is like he'd lied to them about how much money was going to be involved, and he was really shafting them in a way, saying, "Okay, you guys get 80,000 of it," when he's going to be keeping close to $1 million for himself. Once again, it
Yeah.
shows Jerry is very poor at planning things like
Yeah.
that. But and that leads us to a whole other thing. Did you ever see that movie based on the urban legend of the Japanese woman that went looking for the money? Have you heard of that? Okay, so there's a movie. What the fuck is it called? Kumiko, the treasure hunter. So what happened was sometime like in real life, in like the late, I don't know if it was the late 90s or what, some like 30-year-old or something woman from Japan was found dead, frozen to death, like somewhere out in the wastes in Minnesota. And what the real story was, she was some office worker from Tokyo, and somehow she lost her job. And she traveled to America, and it turned out that she had had an affair with some married American guy, and they'd spent time there. So that's probably why she went back. And she basically chose to kill herself because she was depressed. So she just lay down in the snow and died of that. Somehow, some weird urban legend started that she was some weird, confused woman from Japan who was actually saw the movie Fargo, thought it was true, and was looking for the money. It's not true at all, but they made a whole movie about it in 2014. It's called Kumiko the Treasure Hunter.
I did see that. I
Yeah.
think I did see that. Yeah.
I did not see the movie, but I always thought like that's such a weird concept. It's like where do these urban legends come from? You know, it's such an odd sort of concept. Like some Japanese woman is found out there frozen. It's like I heard she thought that movie Fargo was real, so she was looking for the money. Really? Okay. But I mean, I guess there are weirder urban legends, but I mean, it's definitely a weird one for how specific it is, I guess. I haven't seen it. I kind of want to see it, even though I think it's such a silly premise. Because I mean, it's kind of taking like a serious story of somebody's real suicide and turning into some sort of like weird, I don't know, Don Quixote-esque thing. I don't know.
So that's a drama. So okay, that's not like a docu thing.
Yeah, it's a fictional movie. I think some people did then because of the. I think also because of the strength of the urban legend, some people thought it was a documentary, like saying, "Yeah, it was true," but it's not true.
Maybe I saw something else. I know I remember the story now that you mentioned it.
But yeah, that's a good point, Jake. We did have earlier evidence in the movie that he had quite the temper because he does. She was supposed to be returned alive, and he just kills her off screen because he was annoyed by her yelling or screaming or whatever like that. Carl doesn't think much of this. He's like, "What happened to her?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, she kept yelling." And Carl would, because it doesn't matter to them. They want the money. It doesn't really matter to them whether or not they return her alive. They've already killed people that have nothing to do with the plot. I mean, not the plot of the movie, their plot. So obviously they don't have any qualms about her being dead.
At that point, it doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the movie, we've got several people dead. This guy going to jail, got his own wife killed, lost a whole bunch of money. And that's really the Fargo style, as you would see in the shows too. Things usually end pretty badly.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's usually like one character, and it's in this movie, the police woman Gunderson, who's sort of like our hero who more or less gets through. The idea isn't, and I like that too. It's not about her like triumphing or anything like that. It's just about she's done her job. Now she goes back to her home and she continues on. It's more like that. She did her job.
Yeah, and it's like her and her husband were both on the police force, and for some reason one of them had to quit, and she was the better, was better at the job than he was. So he's a painter now.
Yeah. So this is a really kind of funny coincidence again. So the very end of the movie, he talks about how this duck he painted got picked to be on the new stamp. Mm-hmm. That's a real thing that continues to this day. And I probably wouldn't have thought about it, except like not this week, but the week before's episode of Last Week Tonight. They had a whole thing about it because there was this thing about two of the guys that do it have like this weird, crazy rivalry where they like hate each other. And one guy takes it really seriously, where the other guy, the only reason he seems to actually enter paintings is to troll the other guy and make fun of him. It's pretty funny.
That is funny.
Yeah. Because it's this whole thing where people submit paintings of ducks, and there's like this whole like board of judges, and they like vote on it to see what's going forward. And the funny guy, like none of his stuff really ever gets accepted because he doesn't really do serious stuff. He just does like weird, wacky stuff, and it drives the other guy nuts because he doesn't take it seriously. And because it drives him nuts, he decides to up it, and he's just like, so now I do stuff based on stuff I know that annoys him. Like one of the things is like, I don't know a lot about him, but I know from his blog, like he doesn't like President Obama. So I put Obama in some of the paintings, and he's like, I put other stuff in the paintings and stuff like that. It's pretty funny. So it's funny that I had just recently like heard about that whole thing that exists about painters submitting pictures to the ducks or the stamps. And then it comes in at the end of this movie. It's like the one I submitted got approved. But yeah, but I guess it is kind of prestigious in its way. I'm not trying to mock it. I just think it was a funny situation of these two guys that hate each other that are engaged in it.
Yeah, apparently in the movie, were painted by those Hautmans, who were actually close friends with the Coen brothers.
Hmm.
Three brothers who frequently win federal and state wildlife stamp competitions.
Interesting.
This movie is full of like ties to their real life too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even
Like
know where they're from. Like Joel and Ethan Coen. They are from.
I'm not sure where they're from either, but it's just tons of
Yeah,
little
they're
like
from they're from Minnesota. Yeah.
little winks.
Born and raised in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis. So there you go. And they're Jewish. They're Jewish on both sides of their family too.
Yeah, I knew that. There's one movie they did. It's not really a comedy that talks about that, about growing up in that environment, being Jewish.
One of them was married to Frances McDormand.
They still are, aren't they?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, they'd been married since 1984, so they were married when the movie came out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't know that. McDermott has acted in several Coen Brothers films: Blood Simple, Raising Arizona, Miller's Cross, and Barton Fink, Fargo. The Man Who Wasn't There, Burned After Reading, and Hail Caesar. I mean, I don't like the Coens, so I just stopped watching their movies. So what's the latest movie of theirs I've actually seen?
Maybe Hail Caesar.
Probably is No Country for Old Men for me. Hail Caesar was 2016. The last movie they did was for Netflix, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and now they've got an Apple TV movie that's based on Macbeth. So that's different. But I mean, I'll tell you the reason I don't like the Coens is I hate The Big Lebowski more than anything. I find Miller's Crossing to be boring as hell. I hate Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I guess besides that, it's just that everybody loves them. And as far as Fargo and No Country for Old Men go, I like both those movies fine, but I don't see them as the masterpieces that most people see. So that's where my hatred of them comes from. But it's mostly The Big Lebowski. Every moment of that movie for me is pain. Like, it hurts me how much I can't stand that movie.
Dude.
I hate every frame of it. I hate every word of dialogue. I hate every character. But I'm fine with this movie, Fargo. And I hope I've tried to say things that I like about it. I just, I don't know. I just can't feel that strongly about it the way a lot of people do. I mean, the shows are definitely cool. I'm glad that they did make shows because I've enjoyed them. So.
Mm.
Well, yeah, I mean the shows are longer, obviously, so they have the luxury of being able to do that. Plus, I mean, and it's still in the middle. You have somebody like Jerry. Like Jerry's not a bad person exactly, but he's more of a weak person and a naive person. But it shows that that's enough to really have dire consequences if you make the wrong choices, which he definitely does. Because I don't know, I've seen the movie a few times over the years, so I kind of go back and forth in how I change my feelings towards Jerry, whether I feel sorry for him, whether I feel like he got what he deserved, stuff like that. I mean, he got what he deserved, but at the end of the day, you definitely still feel, I mean, his wife didn't deserve that.
Right. Well, his son doesn't have a mother or a father anymore now, so.
Yeah, his father's in jail, and his mom's dead, and all for no real reason. Which is another thing they hammer home in the Fargo sort of universe, which is bad things happen and people die, and usually for no good reason at all, which is life, in life, people die for the stupidest of reasons, just adding to the tragedy.
If he had taken that finder's fee that he was originally offered for the property, it would have amounted to about $70,000. So.
Would have been something, but no, he was expecting a lot more, right? And they were like, it doesn't work that way. We're not going to give you $1 million or $750,000 or whatever the hell it was.
Was he selling cars on the side or something? Because that was the whole problem with the GMAC people. They kept calling for VIN numbers on cars, and he kept saying it's in the mail or something. It's in the mail.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever really made clear what exactly he's done. It's just it says here on the plot summary of Wikipedia that he's been engaged in financial improprieties. So I don't think it really makes it 100% clear. And of course, that's another one of the problems, right? Is like he's saying that he'll pay them $80,000 of the ransom plus the car that they use they can keep. I mean, it's one of the cars off your lot, you idiot.
Right.
You know, and everybody knows it's got dealer plates, which is what leads her to him. And he gets all exasperated. He's like, I thought Blood Simple was very boring, Jake. I don't think it was bad. I was just bored to tears watching it. And I watched that pretty recently too. Well, not recently, but within the last 2 years. Yeah, I don't really get why they're considered like these masters of like neo noir. I think they make kind of flat, boring plots, but Fargo's okay. But getting back on track there, yeah. So the whole car thing is like it's not very smart. He's like, I answered your question, ma'am. It's like, fine, I'll go check the lot. Like this is what happens when you have like such a bad plan and you have no like idea what will happen if the cops come, like what you can even say to them. It's like, well, I'll get someone to look at that. She's like, okay. It's like, you do know that you can't just brush cops off. You can't tell cops you're going to find something out or do something and then not actually do it. They will follow up on that themselves. They expect answers. But it's just like, you go away and I'll think of something, you know?
Yeah.
But those are some of the better scenes, is just watching him get all flustered and exasperated. Because, I mean, I do think that's what most people, every once in a while, the cops do have to deal with people that are pretty cool customers, that are good at lying, good at keeping their calm, good at knowing not to say too much. But I think most of the time they run into people like Jerry who like don't have any experience in this, are really stressed out by it. And, they're doing all the tells. They're like looking around and they're touching their, all those things. It's so obvious that they're like making up a lie right on the spot and that they're really bad at it.
Yeah. He's obviously really bad at it.
But yeah, I mean, there's good performances throughout the movie, but he's the one that I just can't picture anybody different doing it. It has to be like William H. Macy, at least at that time in like 1995.
Yeah.
Like maybe somebody else could do it now, but back then he was the guy for it. As you said, he was pretty aggressive about it, and he had that cocky thing saying like, I need you guys to pick me and not screw up, and I'm scared you're going to screw this up and hire someone else, is what he said. And he's like, I actually said that, you can't play that card too often as an actor. Sometimes it just blows up in your face. But I said, guys, this is my role. I want this. I think he was absolutely right because, yeah, I just can't really picture somebody else in that role. He's so good at it. To the point where, like, when I think of William H. Macy, I almost think of that like it was being his accent, which of course it's not. But he just inhabits that character so well, I think. Mm-hmm. But I mean, obviously, other good performances, Francis McDormand and Steve Buscemi, who we talked about at length. But for me, it's him even above them.
Oh, it's the casting of this movie. Perfect. Love all the roles. Like Bill Pullman was originally supposed to play Jerry.
I mean, Bill Pullman's an okay actor, but no way.
I just can't see it.
I can't either. I'm used to Bill Pullman just being bland. Like, I've never seen Bill Pullman really play any sort of memorable characters. Characters are all kind of the same. Mm-hmm. Even in something weird like Lost Highway, he's still just some guy who's just blithering and going confused throughout it, which I think is the appropriate response to being in a David Lynch movie. Because in a lot of David Lynch movies, the characters don't seem to think it's that weird. What I like about Bill Pullman's character is that he's fully aware of how fucking weird the things happening around him are. He's just like in a state of confusion through that entire thing, which is great. I haven't watched that in a long time. I'd like to watch it again.
Yeah, I need to watch that again too. He's like the ultimate straight man in that.
Yeah, I love his sex scenes too because he looks like he's like having the worst time. I don't know what the direction Lynch gave him on that. It's like, remember, you hate this. Like her vagina is acid. Because like his facial expressions in those sex scenes are so pained. Well, details.
Yeah. He only has one kid. That is true. That's when the father-in-law is listening in on the conversation too. So,
is he?
Yeah, Jerry picks up the phone and the father-in-law grabs it, and that's when he hears it. And he doesn't even talk to Jerry; he just takes the money and leaves.
Okay, yeah. I got my order of events a little mixed up there. But yeah, I also really, like you said, like that scene where she's interviewing the call girls. For some reason, I remembered it as longer. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe just because it is sort of impactful. It's just a funny back and forth. She's like, "You were having sex with the little fella." She's like, "Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." Like we both went to college.
Bull
Yeah,
beers.
see that worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that? I said they were going to the Twin Cities. Yeah. Oh, is that helpful? Yeah. And they're both like, they're like rocking their bodies. They're nodding so hard.
Yeah, nodding's a big thing there too.
But
I
that's
mean, we all nod, but not quite the way they do.
right. That Minnesota Nice or whatever you called it earlier.
Yeah. There's also, I found out, a related one called Iowa Nice. If you want to talk about a state I don't know anything about, it's Iowa. Like if you if you named a random state, I could probably say a sentence about it. Something that describes it or its history or something like that. Iowa, I got nothing. I don't know. Iowa, it's not Idaho, but probably similar.
Wrestling is really big there.
Okay, that's something. I'll file that away. Yeah. But yeah, apparently there's also a related Iowa Nice, which is, I guess, is sort of a similar type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa's like the last state I would name if I had to name all 50, possibly. Because even ones that are small, at least being known for being small is something. Like Rhode Island is really small. That makes me know it because it's small.
Right.
Most states are pretty small though.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's funny. Like if you think about Canada, you kind of take for granted how big everything is. Because the fact is, like, I think I'm from Nova Scotia. If you look at a map of Canada, Nova Scotia is one of the absolute smallest provinces. It's like the second or third smallest, and there's a big jump off between the big provinces and the small provinces. There's not really any medium-sized ones, but Nova Scotia is still bigger than a lot of states. It's bigger than your state of Mississippi, for instance. Not by a lot, but it is. So, so yeah. Sometimes you forget because so many of the states are so highly populated. It's easy to forget, like. Geographically, they're not really that big.
Right.
Anyway, there's no point there. It's just something I was thinking about. Like I always think of Nova Scotia as tiny, but it's actually bigger than quite a few states. It just has, less people.
Right.
But there's also a blurb on here about that whole thing that's also part of not just the movie, but like all the shows, is where they say that like this was that whole thing where it says like this is based on a true story. The names have been changed to respect the survivors, to protect the survivors, but out of respect for the dead, it is told exactly as it happened. Like that's not true for any of them. It's just something they do. None of these things are based on true stories, except maybe they're based in a really, really, really what's the word I'm looking for? Peripheral sort of way. Like it's barely based on something. Because there's a thing on here that talks about there were a couple like real life cases it could have something to do with, but there's not any actual. This is a true story. The events depicted in this film took place in Minnesota in 1987. At the request of the survivors, the names have been changed. Out of respect for the dead, the rest has been told exactly as it occurred. And a blurb with similar wording, just about different times and places, is before every episode of the show. Coen Brothers claimed that they based the script on an actual criminal event, but wrote a fictional story around it. We weren't interested in that kind of fidelity, said Joel Coen. The basic events are the same as in the real case, but the characterizations are fully imagined. If an audience believes that something's based on a real event, it gives you permission to do things they otherwise might not accept, which I think is true. Because you're like, wow, that's weird, but it really happened, apparently.
Huh. Yeah, apparently a guy like killed his wife and put her in a wood chipper. Yeah, was one of the things that happened.
Yeah. Let's see here. The actual murders were not committed in Minnesota. Many Minnesota speculated the story was inspired by T. Eugene Thompson, a St. Paul attorney, is convicted of hiring a man to murder his wife in 1963 near their hometown. But the Coens claimed they never heard of him. But then they changed it again, saying it was completely made up. But yeah, the thing you said was a murder in 1986. Helly Crafts from Connecticut at the hands of her husband who disposed of her body through a wood chipper. Yeah. So it's just sort of, but that whole based on a true story thing, it's just another sort of device, which I get.
Right.
It's fine.
Right.
It's a storytelling device.
And this is set in 87?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. Like, why would you make it a period piece that just, 9 years ago? Why is that so specific? But
I think again, it's sort of like to jive with the whole based on a true story thing, right? The
Mhm.
idea that like it wasn't forever ago, but it was long enough ago to like maybe be a little forgotten. It does add an air of authenticity to it if you want to play the based on a true story angle. Like if the movie came out in '96 and it said if it said this is a true story that took place in '93. I don't think it works quite as well. I think having a bit of a gap does add some authenticity to it. It's like, okay, so it's been a few years, not forever ago, but it's been a while.
Well, apparently they made quite a few mistakes with the period piece aspect.
Yeah, with like cars and stuff.
With I know there's one thing that has nutrition facts on it, which apparently it wasn't a thing until 1990.
Well, that's a pretty small detail, but yeah.
Yeah,
I get it.
little things like that. But you know how people are. They're in the list. They're in the goofs or whatever.
I do find it a little interesting that, yeah, it is a period piece. It's a movie from the 90s set in the 80s. And yet, because it's considered like one of the more prominent movies of the 90s, it's just, it just is so associated with like the 90s, particularly the year 96. Like I said, I don't think 96 was a particularly strong year in film, at least not from my own perspective. And again, obviously, I think of it a little less than other people because a lot of people think, even if it isn't strong, Fargo's really strong. Whereas for me, Fargo would not even be in my top 10 of movies of 96. I'm going to take a look at my movies from 1996. See what I got in there. I know a couple of them. I know like, whatchamacallit, A Time to Kill is there. Right. So my favorite movies from 1996 are Hamlet. That's the one, directed by I forget his name. Big time British actor, Brenna. You know what I mean? What's his name, Brenna? Anyway, you know who he is. Kenneth Branagh. Yeah, that's the Kenneth Branagh. Hamlet is my favorite movie of 1996. Then you got Primal Fear, Scream, Jackie Chan's First Strike, The Rock, Sleepers, Happy Gilmore, Broken Arrow, and The Frighteners. That is my top 10 from 96.
Independence Day, Twister, Mission Impossible, The Rock.
Yeah, these are all big movies that, made a lot of money.
The Nutty Professor, Jerry Maguire, Space Jam.
I've never seen Jerry Maguire, and I probably never will.
Haven't either.
It's one of those movies that's endlessly like referenced and quoted, but I have no interest in seeing. Show me the money. I don't even know why "Show me the money" is such a memorable quote. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I don't get it.
I've seen the scene. It's just him. It's Tom Cruise on the phone with the football player, as played by Cuba Gooding Jr. And for some reason, Tom Cruise, as his agent, is telling him to tell them, "Show me the money." So he says it first. He's like, tell them, "Show me the money." So he yells, "Show me the money." And then he yells it. They sort of yell it back and forth at each other.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. But I don't know. I guess it was very powerful for some people.
I don't get it.
From Dusk Till Dawn and Shine. Those are pretty good movies from 96.
Yeah.
So maybe not weak, but.
Yeah, I never saw Space Jam. And probably because I was watching stuff like Fargo, because I know I saw this in the theater. I think I was by myself, so I must have snuck in, as I wasn't quite old enough to get in on my own yet.
Yeah. Well, see, Space Jam, now there's a snapshot of the time. It's not a good movie, but it's a perfect embodiment of like what was considered hip and cool in 1996, right? Not that although it's funny, it's not like the various Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny guys were considered hip and cool. It was just them trying to make them hip and cool by throwing them through this, filter of 90s pop culture. It's like, well, maybe kids today don't like Bugs Bunny, but they'll love him when he teams up with MJ.
Word to your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bunch of like Jewish executives like telling you like what the kids want to see. They like the baggy pants and the backwards hats and stuff.
Yeah. We'll get that guy from Seinfeld. He'll be like sweaty and Seinfeld's big, so he'll be in there and he'll be sweaty and nervous and stuff. Bill Murray's walking by the set and he loves Michael Jordan, so he can be in the movie for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the kids really know him. Yeah. It's a terrible movie, but I do enjoy it just for all that 90s-ness. Now, there's a new one.
I've heard that new one is absolutely atrocious.
Yeah. I've heard it makes the other one actually look half decent.
I'm not
which I can believe. Not to go on this whole thing about like all the Me Too stuff and stuff, because I mean I'm mostly on board with it. But remember how that whole thing was like they had like a scene with Pepe Le Pew and they cut him because he doesn't fit that. I'm thinking you don't have. Not that I'm a big defender of Pepe Le Pew. He's a one-note character. I'm just thinking you don't have to cut him. You can just change him, just update him a little. How about this? Have Pepe Le Pew in, and he won't aggressively try to rape everything around him. You can still do something with him. You don't have to erase him from history. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, just like how they desexualized the bunny, the female bunny Lola.
Oh yeah, I don't like that.
I'm not going to go on my big rant again about breasts. I'm sure you can find that somewhere. But the short of it is, I do sometimes feel sorry for certain women that have large breasts or girls growing up because society has taught them that they are, sexualized. No matter what, they'll be sexualized and that they are, dirty, which is not fair. I mean, that's just part of who they are and stuff like that. And I mean, so in typical fashion, one of the things they did in changing the character to fix her was to like give her smaller breasts. It's not like the original bunny had like a big rack. She didn't. But anyway, that's just, again, that's how they sanitize things without, if you really want to fix something, then like actually like try to work and fix something. Don't just, do a bunch of surface bullshit. That's what bothers me about things like that. I'm not saying you can't fix things or update things or try to make things more appropriate for the times. You can, but so many times when they do it, it's just so tone deaf.
I mean, on the same token, I mean, why can't a rabbit have large breasts? Why can't a woman have large breasts?
That's what I said. I mean, the thing I always say is like, I'm not saying this is a tragedy or anything, but I'm just saying there will never be like a Disney princess character that has like noticeably large breasts because everybody would have pitchforks and stuff and say like they're a bunch of pervs at Disney. And I'm thinking, what kind of message is that sending to young girls that might happen to have large breasts? Right. It's like, well, the only thing you are is you're a sexual object, and there's something dirty and shameful about you. So that's not me saying, oh, I long to have a Disney princess with large breasts. Because you know what? If you're into that, you can just watch a bunch of fan art where they change it.
Sure.
I'm just saying, as far as like officially in the movie, they'll just never do that because that's the message that they're sending society and also girls, which I think is wrong.
Did you ever see the Soul Moon Fry documentary?
No, but I mean, I know her deal. That's why she lost the job as Punky Brewster. Her breasts become too big too fast. It was making people uncomfortable, and then eventually she had to have the surgery.
If you ever get a chance, it does cover all that, but she like documents like everything in her whole life, and like Jonathan Brandis was a good friend of hers, and unfortunately, a lot of kids that killed themselves around that time that she was really good friends with, and that whole like the Leonardo when he was younger circle, Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire,
yeah,
just a lot of those younger Hollywood guys that are, a lot of them are big stars now, but talks about a lot of that. And yeah, she got a breast reduction when she was like 15 or 16 years old, which I think is kind of young to make a decision like
no,
that.
hers were like out of control though. Like she actually had that. It's funny because nowadays, if you wanted to, you could be quite profitable, right? But it is actually sort of a medical thing where they kind of grow out of control. Like I get why she did it. Like I know it's young, but I mean she was like at porn star levels as like a mid-teen. Like it was crazy. And it was really affecting her life and work. So I totally get it in that situation. And like I said, even girls that where it doesn't go that far, I do feel bad for them because by the time like they start to develop, that's how the world sees them. It's just some sort of sexual object, which is really unfortunate. So yeah, I mean, I see the other side of it too. There's certain girls, they don't mind and they'll lean into it and they'll use it to open doors for themselves. And that is what it is. But we shouldn't just think that, but again, it's not a choice. So plenty of girls that just develop them naturally. It's not like that was their idea. And plenty of them, that's the last thing they want. They don't want to be judged that way. They don't want it to open doors for them. They just want to live their lives and, do whatever their accomplishments are and have their breasts have nothing to do with it. So that's all I'm saying before it gets misconstrued that I feel bad that like I feel like girls or women in our society with big breasts have a hard time. I'm just saying it's either they have a great time because they get a free ride just because of that, or the opposite, and neither's very healthy for a person, really.
Mm-hmm.
But so I know I turned a thing in Space Jam about that, but it is true. Like, if you are sensitive to that sort of thing, like, they're like, okay, we got to fix this bunny. She was way too sexy in the first, and it was inappropriate. It's like, okay, nix the breasts. I get it. It's an amorphized bunny, for God's sakes.
Well, they better take out Bugs as codpiece, because that offends me.
Well, make them all wear pants. Like, I think it was like Finland that like made Donald Duck always wear pants. It's pretty funny.
That's the phrase Donald Duck in it. Became famous in quarantine when people would just wear not have bottoms on, doing their Zoom calls.
Yeah. I don't know, man. That seems especially lazy. Like, if you like to hang around in your underwear or whatever, but you have to do a Zoom call, if you pull on a shirt, it's not like, well, I don't have to put on pants or shorts. It's like, you already put a shirt on. It's like 2 more seconds, you know?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I love Jennifer Connelly, and she's one of the ones that I don't agree with her breast reduction, but that's her choice.
Yeah, but I see why they talk about them, Jake.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, she did get them reduced, which I think wasn't necessary. But again, it's a personal choice, so nobody cares what I think. I'm just saying, in the case of somebody like Soleil Moon Frye, it made a lot of sense. They were actual a medical thing, and she wasn't even 18 yet. Whereas with somebody like Jennifer Connelly, I mean, she was just quite well endowed and had the figure a lot of women would really like, because she was quite thin, but she had the larger bust, which is not that common. But I mean, if that was her choice, that's her choice, because maybe she felt like what you said. Maybe there was too much. Maybe people focused on it too much, and that bothered her. I don't know. So I guess it's her choice. That's why it's nice to see some of her early movies, even if they're bad.
Oh.
Like, check her out in Career Opportunity and The Rocketeer.
That's it.
They're still in all their glory there.
I'm okay with them.
But she is a really good actress. She's actually an actor I do like, beyond thinking she's attractive. I mean, she didn't start off that good. She's goddamn awful in one of my favorite movies, Labyrinth. But, she's only a kid there. She gets better.
Yeah.
But we did, coming back to David Lynch, she's in my favorite David Lynch movie, which we did on here, Mulholland Drive, which I like very much. Mm-hmm. I know she's had some other roles I like, but now I'm blanking. I know we've talked about her before. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's 50 years old now. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen her recently, but I'm sure she still looks great.
Well, Requiem for a Dream, of course.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, she's in Dark City, which is one of my favorite movies. So yeah, she's right. So she's in a lot of movies I really love. She's really good in Little Children.
The House of Sand and Fog.
She's going to be in the new Top Gun.
Oh, no. Is there any chance in hell that movie is going to be even remotely watchable?
I don't think the first one's watchable. So
exactly.
The first one's just a bunch of cliches with a bunch of annoying, aggressive 80s music.
It's a homoerotic movie. I mean, it's...
Yeah. I'm not against that. I'm just saying there's no substance to that movie. It's just a bunch of, like, here's these guys looking hot and cool, and here's these jets flying around looking cool, and there's not really anything going on in the movie. There's no war for them to fight.
Right. It's perfect 80s style over substance,
Yeah. I mean, some of those movies I can still like, but that's not one of them. I'm sure there's some 80s styles over substance movies that I can still enjoy, but not that one. The movie.
I think they actually, the famous sex scene from that movie, where they like pull stuff out of the fridge and put it on each other. Like, I think that was actually. Oh, okay. Is that what that is? Anyway,
well, 9.5 weeks. 9.5 weeks is the one with the ice cubes.
Okay. whatever sex scene is in Top Gun, they added that after the fact because everyone thought it was too gay, so they needed to, I guess hetero it up a little bit.
He's on my tail. He's coming hard.
You can always be my wingman.
Is that's the movie where they say they feel the need for speed?
I'm not sure.
They say a lot of cliches in that movie, so I think that's one of them. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it often comes on TV, and I'll watch like a scene or two. But I mean, yeah, definitely that whole volleyball scene. That's like a landmark in like gay cinema, whether they wanted to or not.
Absolutely.
But I'm not saying you can't do a Top Gun sequel because the first one didn't have much of a story either. But I just mean, if it's called Maverick, so it's the Tom Cruise character. Like, there's no such thing as a fighter pilot in his 50s. You age out of that shit,
Oh, Mulholland Falls, not Mulholland Drive. I was trying to remember who she was in Mulholland Drive.
What? She is in Mulholland Drive. Oh, yeah, she's not. That's right. Who's the... How did I get that turned around in my mind? Who is the brunette in Mulholland Drive? That's going to bother me.
I don't think she's that famous of an actress.
Right, yeah. And I guess it's funny because I've never seen Mulholland Falls, but yeah, I must have.
I haven't either.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. I know part of it has to do with the whole Requiem for a Dream 2, because let me try to put this together, piece this together. There was some way that I tied Requiem for a Dream to Mulholland Drive, but I don't know how I did it. That's weird. Because, yeah, the brunette in Mulholland Drive was not the famous one. The blonde was Naomi Watts.
Mm-hmm.
But what was I tying? I was in some way tying Naomi Watts to her. Like, I know they're separate people. I was thinking of them in a movie together. But I don't think they've ever actually been in a movie together. I mean, it's a weird coincidence about the Mulholland Falls thing, because I've never seen that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some sort of link that I made in my brain, and I don't know what it was. That's going to bother me. But yeah, I said she was in Mulholland Drive, but the actress in Mulholland Drive was actually Laura Elena Haring. Yeah, I can't explain why I made that link. I Meritorious is definitely better. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Top Gun, it's kind of like a blueprint for like a lot of like the movies that like what's his name would do later on. Mr. Style over Substance these days.
Oh, Michael Bay.
Michael Bay, it almost seems like Michael Bay, like a young Michael Bay watched Top Gun. It's like, I'm just gonna make that movie over and over again when I have a career. Because like his whole thing was the same thing that they did with Top Gun, which was like he would like make a deal with the U.S. military, be like, I want to use all your stuff in the movie. Don't worry, I'll make it look totally badass. And the military is like, that's great. This is a great recruitment tool, which is absolutely what Top Gun was. Yeah. People are like, I want to be in the Air Force, and I get it. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That's what I wanted. That was one of my first career aspirations, was to be a fighter pilot, and I was obsessed with those planes and stuff. And I loved the Blue Angels and the Snowbirds and stuff like that. So I mean, I get it. Just mean.
Well, yeah, especially not being in wartime, it makes it all the better.
Right. You don't have to go bomb. You don't have to go bomb anybody or worried about getting blasted out of the sky. You can just do like funny. Well, I mean, especially if you're something like, like I said, like especially if you're like the Blue Angels or the Snowbirds, like your job is just to fly around, look cool, and be fancy.
Yeah.
You don't have to, engage in any of that. But yeah, that's kind of like what sort of the blueprint for like what Michael Bay would do in a lot of his career, which is usually making movies, whether it's Transformers or otherwise, or Pearl Harbor, where he'd like well, I guess not Pearl Harbor because Pearl Harbor was all old stuff, but he'd go in and he'd make deals with the military. He'd be like, I need to use like your hardware for this. Don't worry, I'll make sure you look totally kick ass. And the military's like, good. Which again, there's nothing wrong with. I'm just saying it doesn't translate into a great movie.
That's Tony Scott, right?
Yeah, he's now dead, right? He died a few years ago.
It's kind of interesting because he didn't really do that again. That obvious. Of
Tony Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Scott was one of those guys. I think I don't want to be wrong here, but I mean, I think he just sort of took the jobs. Like, I don't think Tony Scott necessarily had a preference as far as movies goes. I mean, obviously he did some standout action movies.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think he would have been like he never like did like Tony Scott had never did like say a romantic period piece movie. But I don't feel like he would have balked at it if somebody gave him that script. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe I don't know enough about Tony Scott, but Tony Scott just seemed like a guy, like more of a director's director. Like he didn't confine himself to a. But maybe he did because most of his movies are action. So maybe I'm wrong.
But it's not like you watch one movie in particular of his and you're like, that's a Tony Scott, like you were saying.
I mean, it was Top Gun was his second movie, and it was a big hit. So, that probably had something to do with the trajectory of his career. It's like, oh, this guy can do like, big action set pieces, and he kind of went from there. Who directed? Wait a second. Let me check something here. So the original Beverly Hills Cop was directed by somebody named Martin Brest, who I don't know anything about. But the second Beverly Hills Cop was directed by Tony Scott. And you have to believe the only reason that happened is because of the success of Top Gun. Because the first Beverly Hills Cop was one of the biggest hits of the 80s. That was a smash hit. That was like box office gold. So you have to think they would have only given the second one to somebody they thought was good. And I think Top Gun was probably what they wanted. So yeah, I wonder, like, if he hadn't done Top Gun, or if he did Top Gun, but Top Gun wasn't that successful, like, he might have wound up doing very different kinds of movies.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite movie of his is like a lot of people's, like True Romance, which feels more, just because it's written by Tarantino, feels more like a Tarantino movie, even if he's the director. Yeah, I mean, everybody loves The Last Boy Scout. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then he did sort of a bunch of kind of more forgettable stuff. Crimson Tide, The Fan, Enemy of the State.
Those are all good movies, though.
They're okay. Like, they're not bad. I just don't, I just don't think they're particularly memorable. They're not bad.
As far as bad goes, yeah.
As far as bad goes, he did Spy Game. That's a pretty bad. I don't know that I saw that one. That's a pretty bad movie. It's a really, really boring movie. It had Robert Redford and Brad Pitt, so it was supposed to be a big deal, but it was just really dull and did pretty bad.
That's not the one where. No, that's not the one where Brad Pitt's doing a. Brad Pitt. What's the Harrison Ford movie that's got the Irish guy?
The Devil's Own, which was a much bigger. Like, when I said Spy Game was bad, like it wasn't like a massive flop. It just it just didn't do great. Whereas that movie, The Devil's Own, was a flop.
Was that Brad Pitt in that?
That was Brad Pitt as an IRA terrorist or whatever, doing a terrible accent. Apparently, like, that movie, like from the beginning had tons of problems, like script problems, shooting problems. Like, Harrison Ford would like never like to talk about it. Like, he just wouldn't talk about it because he hated doing it so much. I guess the whole thing was a debacle, even from the very start.
That's what I want to hear about, though. I want to hear those stories.
Yeah. I mean, Tony Scott forged his own path. I mean, Ridley Scott, of the two, most people think of Ridley Scott as probably the more auteur. He did the more artistic type stuff. But part of me thinks, that doesn't mean Tony Scott couldn't have. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was his later career. The late phase of his career was movies starring Denzel Washington, which are
Man on Fire. Was that one of them?
Yeah, Again, not a bad movie, just not memorable really in any
Yeah.
way. At least not to me. Like it's a
Hmm.
movie you watch and then kind of instantly forget.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fine. You know, as much as Denzel Washington is a good actor, he doesn't really have a filmography I'm not that interested in.
Hmm.
Obviously I like Glory quite a bit, but after that, they're just sort of I don't know movies. He is in my favorite football movie, which is Remember the Titans, where he
Oh
plays the
yeah,
coach.
that's a good movie.
Yeah, definitely my favorite movie about football. It's also good because it's based on a true story and it's pretty accurate. Like, I mean, obviously, like most things, they'll change a few things and fictionalize it, but
Hmm.
I mean, it's pretty darn close to what actually happened, which I respect, which is pretty cool.
Hmm.
They didn't just like invent a bunch of stuff or change a bunch of things. Good old Denzel. Getting up there himself.
Yeah, he is. But I guess this may be a good time to call it.
Yeah, said, I mean, maybe people are disappointed because it's not me ripping into the Coens, but I didn't want to do that. But I mean, I've tried my best to say things I like about this movie. I think it does well. Like I said, the only thing I can say is I agree with most of the things people say about this movie. It just doesn't affect me to the same degree it does other people, I guess. Like, I like this stuff. I just don't love it, I guess is what it is. Because I don't have problems with the movie Fargo. I think it's quite good. Um, or, I don't know, average, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't have any problems with it, that's for sure. Like I don't have things to tear it down or anything. I think it's a pretty well acted story. It's a little different from what was typical maybe at the time. Like nowadays, I think movies have taken cues from it, but back when it
Hmm.
came out, it was less typical. Like we said, like the idea of like not just having good guys and bad guys, but people in between. The idea of like an ordinary sort of citizen like Jerry, who's not really a bad guy, but he gets himself into a situation and he makes all the wrong choices, and he tries crime and he really sucks at it and has
Yeah.
dire consequences. That's more common now, I think, but I don't think it was as common then. Um, the Minnesota nice thing is what it's famous and infamous for. I mean, some people, maybe people from that area, are a little annoyed by it, but I think it gave us a nice little sort of bit of pop culture in a way, and maybe even brought some attention to the area. Because I mean, the whole like we were saying is like when you think about the U.S., there's so much focus and emphasis on big cities like New York or L.A. or Chicago, places like that, or
Hmm.
more exotic places like I don't know, like Hawaii or the Grand Canyon. It does point out like there's stuff going on in between too. Like places like these are sort of the overlooked places like Minnesota and North and South Dakota. Like these are overlooked places, but they're full of life and drama, blah blah blah. So it's good from that perspective too. Like I said, it's almost like it's single handedly, although probably not single handedly, but invented like a subgenre, kind of like small town neo noir, which has produced some interesting things that I don't think too many people know about. Have you seen The Ice Harvest yet?
No, I have
You
not.
would probably get a kick out of The Ice Harvest. It definitely takes cues from this movie, and I think it's set in Kansas. John Goodman's like a small time like mafia boss guy. John Cusack's the main guy. I can't remember what he does. I haven't seen him in a few years, but it's sort of the same deal. It's like set in Kansas somewhere. It's in the snow. Little sort of nice little neo noir sort of small town type thing. It definitely takes cues from Fargo. I haven't seen that in a few years. I'd like to see it again. I think you'd probably appreciate it if you can find it somewhere. So that's the best example I can come up with, but there's probably others. So I do have to give credit where it's due. I don't see it as one of the best films of the '90s, but if people do, that's fine. And as you said, this probably was a big sort of launching moment for Steve Buscemi, even though he was still always more character actor than leading actor. It led to a lot of good character actor roles in a lot of high profile movies. So yeah, definitely important for his career trajectory. As we said, not a typical sort of main character either. A lady cop, she's pregnant, probably always being underestimated by the people around her. But in the end of the day, she gets the job done, and shows a lot of integrity. Blah blah blah. I mean, feel good from that perspective. I mean, there's a lot of death and tragedy going on in the movie, but her arc isn't bad. And you also sort of see like just how human. It's not like she needs to be humanized, but I mean, I don't know. Sometimes in movies with cops, the idea is just showing them as like really badass heroes and stuff. This is a little more down to earth, and I really do like her little talk at the end where she just talks about, it was all for money. Like, why would you do that just for money? People are dead, I mean, it's just a simple thing, but sometimes these things need to be stated, I think, to be appreciated. It's like, yeah, that's obvious, but I'm glad she says it. And yeah, it's falling on deaf ears. She's saying it to some hardened criminal who's killed people and doesn't care. But I'm still glad she said it, I guess, So there is a lot to like about this movie, as I said. As far as the Coen Brothers go, this and the other movie, the very first movie we covered on the show, No Country, are both movies I like. I'm just a little confused that they are loved the way they are, because I don't think they're bad at all. I enjoy them fine. I'm not swept up in whatever it is that excites people about those movies like I am. Like, yeah, I don't know. But I'm not tearing them down in any way. So I will throw the word overrated out there, but that's only personally, so people don't take that too far. To me, it seems overrated, but I don't know. It's still definitely good.
Well, I still love it.
Yeah, and a lot of people do, a lot of people do. So it's a movie people come back to all the time. It's it's shown the test of time. It hasn't like faded away or anything. Because sometimes movies get a big buzz and even win some Oscars, and then people don't really talk about them much anymore. The one, speaking of noir or sort of neo noir, I don't know if it's worth doing on the show, but I always feel like was huge when it came out and has totally faded is L.A. Confidential. That movie was a big deal when it came out with its star-studded cast, won some Oscars. It was like a big, sort of like introduction moment for like Russell Crowe and stuff. And people loved that movie. And it felt like in the next few years, like it just sort of went off the map and people never talked about it or brought it up anymore. But yeah, I assume some people feel that way. But no, most people really, really have a strong love for this movie. And I'm not trying to convince them that they shouldn't or tear them down. I'm just saying it's never hit me that way. But I definitely recognize it's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the scope of their career, like I mostly hate the characters the Coens produce, but this movie has characters I like. So,
well, cool. I guess thanks for putting up with us tonight, guys. As always.
Yeah, thanks. I'm certainly glad to have anybody that joined us live. That's always a bonus, and that'll do for this time. Going forward, not sure what we're doing, but try to get a little more consistency going.
Yeah, shooting for the Tuesday slot if we can.
Yeah,
stuff comes up sometimes.
Yeah, we've had a run of pretty bad luck in like the last month or so, but things will turn around.
Cool. Well, we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye now.